Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I would say good evening, but I feel conflicted because the sun is shining still and right in my face. So it feels weird to say good evening when the sun is still shining so bright. But it is good evening from London. Hi, Guilherme. How are you doing? Welcome back again.
Not bad, not bad. Okay, happy to be here.
Nice, nice. Where are we? Today we have our episode 49 to Time to Talk. Time to Talk is an initiative that I put together a couple of years ago now, almost, where every couple of weeks we get together to try to discuss something about mediumship. The main idea behind this initiative is that you participate, you join us, you send your comments, send your stories, send your questions, and we'll bring them up to try to make this as dynamic as possible. The idea is not to have a lecture, it's more to have a discussion, a conversation. Today, we are on episode 49, From the Occult to Science. But before we go into that one, Guilherme just told me that he thought that was a very difficult topic. I'm going to ask him why, because he knows I like to ask questions. But before we go there, let me say thank you to our broadcasters, the groups that are helping us here. First of all, the Spirit Society of London, both of us are members of this group. The SSL is a study group dedicated to study Spiritism. We have sessions on Tuesdays online, face-to-face on Thursdays, have study groups on Saturdays as well. So if you'd like to learn more about our initiatives, you can go check out our pages, like them, and get some information there. SSL is affiliated to BUS, the British Union of Spiritist Societies, which works as a federation here in the UK, trying to unite the multiple Spiritist groups here in the UK. There's a lot of initiatives they are behind. Go check their page as well. And the last one is Kardec Radio, which has been around for, I don't know how many years now. I think I lost track. I think it's 12 years. Kardec Radio has a lot of content online in English about Spiritism. They even have an app. So go to your stores to get the app so you make sure you don't miss out on anything. Go like their pages as well because they have a lot of initiatives about Spiritism. Right. Today's episode, From the Occult to Science. And I'm going to say why. The reason why this topic came to my mind was, to this day, still, when I talk about Spiritism, when I talk about mediumship, especially if I'm talking about mediumship with people who are not Spiritists, there is an initial barrier to break, just to get people to think about mediumship as not something mystical or magical or charlatans, or to try to move away from that is always tricky. And that's the main reason why I wanted to bring this topic up here today. When I shared this with Guilherme, he thought, difficult topic. Why do you think this is a difficult topic, Guilherme? Are you pretending to be on mute? No, you are on mute.
On mute. No, first of all, I loved when I'm thrown under the bus.
Oopsie.
No, but actually, when I said that to you, Rafael, it's because there's a lot of people that through their practices, through their beliefs, they reinforce the idea of the occult on people's mind, And when you were saying that we need to try to bring them more to the natural side, more to the scientific side, yeah, I agree with you. But it's not easy. It's not easy. Because the only way to change this perspective is through your experience, is through practice. Because you may read a lot, but practice is what will change your view. Practice, your exposure to the phenomena in a serious environment is what will change your perspective. Because that's a personal point of view, of course, because I can read a lot, but as a human being, I create my own truth. And it's not because I'm reading a book that I would change my truth. And some people may say, yes, but you can always witness some phenomena you cannot change either. That's very true as well. So that's why I thought it's difficult. The person needs to be open to consider other possibilities than the possibilities that he or she considers as the one that's correct. Because if the person is not open to new possibilities, very unlikely we'll be able to demonstrate, and the person will be happy with whatever she may be exposed.
That's very true. Guilherme, I see we have some friends online, so let me ask them first of all to share with us, say hello to us, tell me your name, where you are connecting from, and if you have any experience or questions or take on that specific topic. As Guilherme said, trying to move the subject mediumship from this occult and mystical subject to something more scientific. It'd be good to hear the questions, comments, and so on. But one thing that I started to kind of read and try to do a little bit of research about that, and the thing that for me kind of helps to understand why this still happens and why mediumship is still associated to those things is to think about how mediumship evolved or is used. Evolved maybe is the wrong word, but how mediumship was used in the past in different settings, in different ways, right? Because we always repeat here, mediumship is not something new. Mediumship is something natural. Mediumship is something organic, and therefore has been around for a long, long time. And in many occasions in the past, many passages that we hear about and so on, in fact, they might have been, or probably they were, mediumistic phenomena. They are just not seen that way. I mean, I'm gonna just quote here one of the main ones. I think we read a message that the Kardec received from Joanna d'Arc. Joanna d'Arc is probably one of the most known characters in history about everything that she went through and the revolution that she led and the persecution that she suffered. And she comes back afterwards, after she passed away, to explain that in reality, all of those visions and inspiration and the guidance and instructions and that she received, that led us, she claimed that was what gave her the direction in terms of what she needed to do. We find out that they were all messages that she was receiving from spirits, from mentors, and so on. And in reality, it was just a very skilled, maybe that's not the right word, medium that was receiving those visions and hearing those voices and so on through mediumistic phenomena. And that's just one example, right? There's there are many others in history. But over time, what happened is this ability of seeing things or talking to spirits, it was deterred from its original intention, its sole intention, and it became something, in many cases, in many societies and so on, something commercial, something that people would use for material benefits, and the mediums themselves started to use it as a way of receiving income, like selling their skills, their abilities. And I think that's probably the center of how things became associated to something negative or something from the occult or mystic. And there's only one way that we can move away from that into understanding reality, what is behind mediumship. And that is study. Another thing that we repeat a lot here. We always talk about studying it. And we will talk a little bit about that, but that was exactly how Kardec and other not famous, but like important spiritist names studied the phenomenon. My question to you, Guilherme, is when you started to study a bit more about spiritism, how did you bring this element of science to the center of how you study things, to the center of how you explain things as well? Because I'm fortunate enough to have conversations with you, and then you always bring back that element of, okay, but how do we know that this is true? How do we know that what's behind this? Or how do we know that the reference where the explanation comes from is trustworthy? So how do you take that for you?
Rafael, I think everything started when I start not to accept the miracles. I start not to accept magical events or unique events. When we think about the universe, everything's perfect. We must have some laws and principles behind all of it. Perhaps we don't even know. By the way, we don't know all of them yet. But must be a reason behind everything. And if there is a reason about something that we see and we don't understand, that's, to me, science. Or at least through science, through scientific methods, we will be able to at least elaborate theories and to understand better what is behind all of it. Spiritism is a philosophy, but is also a science. The method used by Kardec was scientific. And many people may think, well, how is scientific? Which instruments they have used? Well, science is not only made by instruments, it's also made by principles, by analysis, by observation. And the only way I can feel the Spiritism can fulfill my questions is through the scientific side of it. Mediumship is no different. Well, there are two options. Or I'm crazy, or there's something serious, and there is a law behind the mediumistic phenomena. And I truly believe that through observation and through practice, you start to eliminate doubts and you receive a lot of answers. I'm not sure if I answer your question, but that's the way I see.
You did. I think you helped. And you said something that actually got me thinking. Before, let me just say hello to Severina. She's with us again. Hi, Severina. Nice to see you here. There are two things I think that are important to kind of move away from the association of mediumship and the mystical as a mystical subject. The first one is the understanding and analysis that the mediumistic phenomena is true. It happens, right? And that is the first one. And because, as you said before, like if you go back into history and talk about miracles, or even if you start to reading specific items in other parts as well, I think in the Old Testament, there is a couple of passages in the Genesis where Abraham is talking to 3 angels, and then Abraham is also talking to God. We can go even further. I will be bold enough to say Moses and his revelations also that he received, again, him hearing from, this entity on the other side, most likely higher spirits, not God directly, but higher spirits working under his command.
And there's just interrupting a bit, and there's one thing. Through mediumship, we are able to answer some of those events that you brought. Some answers that has nothing magical behind, nothing miraculous. And if you do have any other possibility to show me that brings some clarity to this matter, I'm very keen to hear. I'm very keen to bring that on board.
Yeah.
But until today, I could not find that level of information elsewhere. And I am finding that in the Spiritism through method, through analysis, through common sense, if you like. But other than that, we hear a lot of things. Celestial beings. What are celestial beings, for example? Where they come from? What are they? Are they humans? Are they not human? Yeah, and then you have many different answers, and lots of them coming more like into the mystical than something that is more logical.
Yeah. But that's exactly, I think that's the starting point, is to think about all of those moments. There's no magic, right? I mean, there's no magic behind, and think about again the laws that govern nature. They cannot be broken. So we need to find ways of explaining how those things would happen. And the more you go in and the more you see those examples, the Old Testament is full of examples where we have when you predict that the Messiahs will come, when you predict like the elements of the apocalypse, when you predict things coming from dreams. Even when you go on and there's a passage where Moses starts to, Moses prohibits the communication with spirits. So there's a lot of indications coming that in reality, mediumship is always there. And that's probably the best way so far, as you said, to explain those cases.
Let me just ask you something. I love those subjects. Well, if someone is forbidden me to do something, means that thing exists.
It's possible, yeah.
Right? Otherwise, he would not forbid me to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
How can I forbid you to do something that does not exist? So, through every creed you may have, you have things like that. You're using Moses, going to the Bible, but there are others. You have plenty of examples like that. The thing is, just thinking about it doesn't help. But if we bring more a scientific method to understand at least what it's all about, that's what brings you more confidence to, I'm not crazy, or I'm not believing in magic or something like that. At least there is a theory that brings some comfort, brings something that may answer, if not completely, at least partially, my questions or my doubts,
Yeah. I go further. I go out of the Old Testament and New Testament, because when I was comparing, I found an article online that was comparing the experiences of Paul of Tarsus, so when Saul became Paul, and to the transformation of Buddha. And Saul, which was Jewish, I can't remember like the names in English anymore, but it was Jewish, and he had to go through this extremely long and painful transformation in terms of awakening and reflection, even to the point where he had specific visions and conversations with Jesus when Jesus was clearly not physically there where he was, and he saw other things. So he was there was revelations given to him. There was clairvoyance to a certain point given to him, in terms of not clairvoyance, but being able to look at the future a little bit. Anyways, there was all those elements that can be explained a little bit with the elements of mediumship. And when I started reading about the comparison between Poe and Buddha, because Buddha also went through a big transformation. He was a prince, and then he decided to leave everything behind to go into this journey for knowledge and elevation. And there's a specific moment. Well, there's a lot of experiences in that journey, but there was a specific moment that is described where Buddha was sitting under this tree, and in a moment of meditation where he finally kind of broke the barriers of his physical containment, let's say, and he entered a special state of conscience. They allowed him the comprehension of the universal order of things. So again, we also come to this element of another figure in a specific moment where they are able to access ideas and clarification and so on in a specific state where they can go beyond their physical limitations, let's say. As I said, so if you look in history, you'll see many other cases where mediumship could explain what is happening there. Now, when we start to look into Spiritism and understand the history of Spiritism, you see that mediumship, again, is at the very core of Spiritism, because it was through mediumistic phenomena that the interest, that sparkled the interest of these professors, scientists, and so on, to understand what was happening. And all started with physical phenomena, where tables were moving around and floated, and objects were moving around, and noises were being made out of nowhere. And if it stayed like that, it was fine. It was entertaining for a little while, but then it wouldn't go anywhere else. People would think if there was some sort of a trick behind. But then when the experiment started and people that were seeing those things started to ask questions to those flotating or moving objects, and the objects started to answer by ways of, knocking one for yes, two for no, and things like that. And then slowly we started to understand you could ask questions to these things, and they were giving the answers back. That's when the professors and scientists, they started to look into, okay, we need to understand what is happening here. Yeah.
May I throw something here?
Yeah.
You talking in that sense, and I want to put that back into science. Nowadays, can we say that we still believe in Adam and Eve after all the discoveries from science?
Well, I can't.
I don't know. I'm just throwing the answer. Because if through science we manage to find there is no spirit, there is something else, I'm very happy to embrace. I'm very happy to see beyond what I believe, right? So through science, maybe in another 10, 20, 100 years, I don't know, we'll see that what we are saying is wrong. Or we may see that what we are saying is right. That's why I think it's important to have science, to have method in everything you believe. Because what you believe is not important. It's what you can prove or disprove, right? Because there's a lot of people that say, Rafael, I don't believe in spirits. I don't believe in mediumship. Can you prove they don't exist? If you cannot prove they don't exist, you can be right only 50%. of the equation. You cannot be 100% right because you cannot prove. So why I'm bringing that into that conversation? Because I think one thing complete another. What Kardec did in his time, he was not happy through turning tables or through something he did not know. So what he started to do? Questions. He started to investigate. He started to create a method. He started to at least he was trying to see beyond what everyone else was seeing at the time. So I think that is kind of mantra the humanity should have,
Yeah. But that was exactly the point. I was watching a series. Can't remember the name of the series now. It was talking about our ability to question things, and I remember what it was. I'm reading the Gabriel Delan, and was reading one of the books about his investigations on materialization, and I am a big fan now. I've only discovered him recently, but I'm a big fan already because the way he starts the book is pretty much with the quotations of very well-known and respected philosophers or scientists, all bringing the element of we need to be able to question things, that the real truth lies on being able to test things, question things. And if we are starting from absolute truth, that if we feel like we have the complete understanding of something, then we're already missing out on many things. And this is not from a spiritualist perspective or a spiritualist perspective. He was talking about a scientific perspective. It's a shame I don't have the examples here because it was a pretty powerful way of starting a book that is going to look into mediumistic phenomena. Pretty much trying to remind us that every single scientific discovery wasn't possible until that moment. Like the big breakthrough discoveries, there were things that were not possible until they were. So the possibility of things it has to be always there when we're investigating things, especially from a scientific perspective. But going back to Kardec, so Kardec was the same thing. He was first of all, he was skeptical about these things. He thought these were just tricks. And then when he started to go there and see him, and when he received feedback, let's say, from peers, people that he respected, the position, the knowledge, the intellect, and they said, look, you have to come. This is not a trick. And they are now giving us intelligent answers to questions. And he went on to try to understand and so on. But Kardec, just like many others, they went on also to try to understand, are we sure there isn't any other way that this is being played as a trick? How do we ensure that those things, those messages, were not a trick? And again, I'll go back to Gabriel Delan. Gabriel Delan was a big fan of Kardec as well. And when he was studying the phenomena, he goes at length to describe every single step, specifically when we talk about materialization, every single step that him and others were taking to make sure that there was no way of tricking people. And it's like numerous steps, like from preparing the room beforehand, from locking the room and putting like the seals on windows and doors. Anyways, he goes at length to describe every single step they took not to make sure there was no trick on that. You're going to say something?
How can I be 100% sure nowadays that what we see is true.
It's much more difficult nowadays because you have AI to create, all of these fake videos and images that are just so perfect. It's more difficult.
So, think is not enough anymore.
Yeah.
See is not enough anymore. So there is only one way that will have a bit more clarity to give us confidence in what we see, in what we believe or not, is through science. That's the only way. Nowadays is the only way. Yeah. Will we have that? Maybe not. But as I said, it's 50-50, right? Until we are able to be 52%, 53%. So then we are more inclined to yes or no. But until then, it's 50-50. But today is very difficult. For example, at that time, when they were doing materializations, yeah, they were putting padlocks, they put, you name it, right? To ensure the security of the test. Nowadays, that's not enough.
Yeah. But I think that's also one of the reasons why it happened when it happened, because we had the conditions to have better controlled environments to ensure things were, happening in that specific way. But even because I go even further, because a lot of the work is Kardec did was receiving, sending out questions to different mediums in different parts of the world, receiving the answers and collating answers to understand if the answers were the same or similar and so on. So he was validating if a specific revelation that was being given at a specific time was coming from different parts of the world, from independent sources that had no knowledge of that specific topic, they could not talk to one another. Nowadays, you can't guarantee that anymore, right? Because of how interconnected we are. So even to replicate some of these things nowadays is a bit more difficult. You still can do it, but it's a bit more difficult. But in the end, when you start studying spiritism, when you start to seeing all at length all of the checks that the professors went through, professors, doctors, I don't know which other way to kind of talk about them in a more generic way, because none of them were professors, but in any ways, I'm going to call them professors because they were teaching us stuff. To make sure that the scientific method was behind the revelations that they were being given. And I think that's probably the trick in terms of viewing mediumship from a different perspective. Now, let's say we are here, and then something happens, have an experience, and a friend of ours says something, or even somebody comes to us and invites us, and then we, for the first time, start hearing about these things. How do we go about that? How do we go about trying to understand these things from a different perspective and not rushing to just kind of say, oh no, this is just this doesn't make sense, or whatever it is.
Rafael, to start with, I don't talk about it. If you make a question, then I'll try to answer with the little we know. But if no one is talking about, if you're just saying what you believe, that I don't like any quarrel. I don't like to go into any argument about this kind of thing, because on the end of the day, we don't change anyone. We don't change people's perception, right? If you don't want to hear something, you may be talking like an hour about a subject, and on the end, you're just wasting your time. But for those that are really making an honest question because they have some doubts, or they are willing at least to hear what you have to say, I always try to go to the scientific side. What do you mean, scientific side? When I am able to reproduce one phenomena 10 times, no one can deny there is a method behind to make it happen. There is a principle. There are rules. There are universal laws behind that. And that's the way I am starting to talk about it. Because you can argue about anything, but you cannot argue about something that we all have. And mediumship is organic. If it's organic, we all have to a certain extent. One have more, one have less, but we all have. And then when you start to show that we all have things in common, for example, I'm thinking about my daughter, and a few seconds later she called me. Is this just happening with me because I'm a medium, or it does happen to everyone? I guess it does happen to a lot of people. That
there's a lot of examples. Like, it's very common to hear that.
Mm-hmm. Right. So, if it's happening, is it true or it is not true? It's up to you to tell me. Because if you face that experience, do you want to take that on board and try to analyze how that is happening? Or do you prefer to believe that's magical? It's a coincidence? It's up to you. If you want to go on that avenue, good trip for you. But if you want to understand behind that, the possibilities that may are behind that event, then we have how to explain at least what we believe, what we see, what we have practiced doing. So that's my way to approach that kind of thing, because I don't see another way to do it. I really don't.
What do we think about? It's a difficult question. I don't know if you should ask that. I'm going to ask anyways. How do you go? Because again, if you go back to when you use the word medium, people associate it, somebody who's a fortune teller or, something like that. And in reality, if we take away like mediumship is a fact. Now, how people use the mediumship is up to them. Some people use them, to tell fortune and so on, and charge for sessions and so on. And it's up to them to decide if that's what they need to do. And some other people might not even have mediumship, but they also trick people to make a living out of that. And I think one thing is that again, my memory is so bad, it's a shame. Because there was another phrase or example that it's not because you have a specific event or a specific phenomena and the majority of people are there just pretending, that doesn't make the phenomena not true, right? It might make these people tricksters and so on, but that doesn't speak for the phenomenon itself. It gets in the way of studying it and exploring it a bit better, and investigating and so on. But just because we have some people pretending doesn't mean that the people who have it are not there.
There are ways to minimize that possibility, right? One of them is there is any financial compensation about mediumship? It's up to you if you want to go in the avenue, but me personally, I would go in a different direction, because everything that is money involved in this planet, we know what happened, right? So that's one simple way to minimize that. There are people that do that kind of thing, not for money, they do for different reasons. But if you go already doing something like eliminating the financial aspect, you already reduce the margin that you may encounter people faking it. There are also people that charge financially, and they are true mediums. They're also there too, right? So it's up to the person to decide which avenue they really want to go, really, But for me, mediumship is something we received for free, and it's something we must give for free. So
I think there's also an element of when we talk about, and we mentioned this here before as well, when you're talking about how people are using their mediumship. And if you think about mediumship, again, we're reminded that mediumship is intermediary between the spirits that are on the other side and us here on the physical plane. Depend spirits, they have their priorities, their intentions, their plans, their habits, what makes them happy and tick. And there's an element, and there's a question that we need to we need to impose, which is, depending on the type of mediumistic work that is being done, what kind of spirits will be involved. And I think that's a big question, but that's a question that it is meant to be a big reflection question. But the thing is, a lot of mediums might ask, and we see that in some cases. So mediums might ask, but if I have this ability, right? So if I have this gift, if I was given this gift, why not use it? To my own benefit, to pay my bills and to generate my income. And why using that to generate that income would necessarily associate me with spirits that are not interested in the greater good? That's a big question.
Rafael, we should be paid by something that is a byproduct of what we do or what someone else does. If the result from what the spirit is doing through me entitle me to charge for what he or she, the spirit, is doing, if you think that's the way to go for it. But we know the consequences through the meetings when mediums that practice those activities in that way, after they realize that they could have used the mediumship in a different way. So, yeah. But I would like to change a little bit that direction and ask you why you call something occult. Is because it's hidden?
Yeah, I guess it's because it's mysterious. It's a mystery, or it's like it's not wide. It's not in the open. It's not widely known. Let's say.
Okay, so that means that only few people have been granted access to that level of information, like in some codes, like in some examples we saw through history, that just one group could have access to that level of information. Is that right?
Suppose, yeah.
So what is the best way to not consider mediumship more as an occult anymore? Is to publicize.
Open it.
Is to make it available to everyone. And sometimes even in the spiritism, there are people that try to narrow down the amount of people that can go to a mediumship meeting, narrow down the amount of training, the amount of studies for. But no, we need to study everything else. Mediumship is just for a little group. So Doesn't make any sense at all, right? So the best way to eliminate that is making available to everyone in a shape and form that the group or the person can understand. Because if I'm talking to someone that's PhD, he will be able to capture the information in a certain way. If I'm talking to someone with an average education, you need to talk with a different way. You need to present the same in a different way. Otherwise, it's very difficult to understand to both of them. If you speak in very simple language to the person that is too elevated, he may be in trouble to understand what we are trying to say too, you know. And the other way is also true. If you speak too complicated words and too complicated methods to someone that does not have that level of education, like I don't, so it becomes too complicated. So we need to present what we managed to learn so far in a very simple way that everyone can understand. Everyone can make questions. Everyone can try to figure out, even by themselves, after that little introduction, what it's all about. You know, I think that mediumship has been for too many years, decades or more, considered something that is too complicated. No, it's just for that group after you do like 20 years study or something like that. That does not help. That does not. I could not see that anywhere else. I could not see that anywhere, even in Kardec, saying that we should have that to a small group or only after study 20 years about the subject. I never saw that.
You make a very good point about making access to this available to openly to everyone in terms of knowledge, but also in terms of just understanding how things work, how things operate, and being exposed to things. One thing that I think it's still, especially here in the UK, and you probably see that in other countries as well, is that the lack of knowledge and investigation in those things, I think, ends up not giving opportunity, even further opportunity for people to, ask things or access things and so on. How would you go about? How would we be able to help people then? I mean, if somebody's curious, interested, or if they're going through things and they've reached everything that they could have, all of the limits they had to understand that from, medical perspective or scientific perspective, to explore the mediumistic side of it.
I always thought to have on the Spiritist Center specific studies about mediumship. Medium's book, obsessions, and topics related like perispirit, ectoplasm, and a few other things that are related to mediumship. So this is the first step. Make available to everyone that may want to join a kind of study. Don't need to be something massive, but a simple, humble study where people come and bring what they manage to understand, the questions, and people study together. I'm not talking about lectures. I'm talking about a simple study, really. This is the most important. The second thing that I always thought as well is to give opportunity to people to see the practical side of it. Because offering people, I'll give you a 1-year course or 1-year study, and at the end of this study, goodbye, figure out by yourself what to do with that. This is very easy for the group because they don't engage themselves. They don't have further responsibilities with the group, if you like. But I think we need to change. I think that after we made available studies, we need to give the opportunity to people to get acquainted to the practice. Because you don't learn mediumship in a book. You don't. Like you don't learn your work only through books. You may learn the theories behind, you may learn part of what other people have learned. You need to put your hands on, otherwise you will not learn. It's like someone that finished the uni. I will ask anyone, which is the percentage of what you learn that you use on your first job? It's very little. The margin is very little. Through practice, then you start to see how things can be interconnected. And then, yes, the uni was very helpful to allow you to progress. But mediumship is the same. Let's give people access to the information that we have. Let's give a practice. Let's give opportunity to people to see, to get closer. And perhaps we'll find that some of them are ostensive mediums, some of them are not. And if we do find that, what are we going to do with them? Say goodbye to them as well? That's very simple. We need to give opportunities. I think that's the main key.
Yeah. So I would recommend, I think we talk about the medium's book a lot here as well. And I think to Guilherme's point, I think that's one of the basic studies that people who need to go through. Or even if you read by yourself and you feel like you understood everything and you know everything, then you didn't read it properly because it's just. But I think that's the important element of the medium's book, and it brings it is that how much questioning and structure was behind understanding the phenomena. So to give an explanation on how things work, because it's just another phenomena in nature, just like any other biological, chemical, and etc. Phenomena. And so that's probably the one that's like, there you have the initial move from seeing mediumship as something occult to seeing something as something scientific, let's say. There would be more books on that, and as I said, I think I'm just learning about it, learning a bit more. I mean, I knew about him, but I'm studying him only now. And again, I'm surprised by just in the introduction of one of his books of how much explanation he brings to the scientific method behind it, and the philosophical aspect of asking the questions and understanding what's behind some new phenomena that we need to investigate as, as a society, as individuals, as human beings. We are reaching the end of our session today, so I wanna, before I go to my usual announcements, I just want to ask if there's any final remarks, Guilherme, that you wanted to share.
We all knew how to make questions when we were very little, when we were kids. We asked why a lot. Another characteristic that we had is that we never accept a no as an answer. We could say, yeah, okay, no. Why? And mediumship is the same. Mediumship should be open to everyone to allow them to make questions. And if by any chance you received a no, or someone saying this is that, and forget anything else, make your question again. You may be about to find something that this person that is telling you no could not find, or was lazy to find. So try to find an opportunity to get acquainted to the information, and hopefully also find a place where you can be made acquainted to the practical side of things. And that's not just for the spiritists, this is for everyone, because perhaps you will find your answer, and that will help you to continue your path. even if it's not under spiritism, but at least you will know what you're feeling, why things are happening. This is not hidden, it's not occult anymore. It becomes something more pleasant to understand. And yeah, I would give an incentive to everyone to at least trying to find information, dig out by yourself, or ask someone to help. But don't miss the opportunity.
Very good. Thank you, Guilherme. Let me, with that, bring our announcements here before we close. I just realized I need to update these announcements because every Monday we have finished Astral City. We are now studying the next book, which is The Messengers, I believe. So we need to update this for the next one. But if you'd like to join us, I have the details there. Every Wednesday we have Spiritual Lights talking on specific different topics every week with different guests. So just check out Buzz page and channel on YouTube, and you'll be able to see what's coming. And then every Saturday we are offering the studies series of the Medium's book. So I have the details here. Feel free to join us. We are going step by step. But before I close, I see there's like a last minute question from Severina, which is a very good question. Her question is, can I practice mediumship alone? I will allow you to answer that, Guilherme.
My answer is yes. You can practice. But especially on the beginning, I do not recommend you to do. Because you have to go through a process to learn how to deal with that and what to do with that. But how can I do that by myself, alone? Depend on the type of mediumship you are working with. So mediumship, you cannot, because you need to have more people around you to have the final results. Some others you can work by yourself. But by the way, if you're using mediumship, you are never alone. There are spirits around you and your benefactor and others. But to do that alone, I would recommend only after you've been through what I call the learning process of mediumship. You need to have the minimal exposure, and you need to have the minimal development, safe development of a mediumship before you go on the avenue. Otherwise, you may take some risks, and as you will be alone, it's not recommended. All right?
Very good. Severina, I'll just say you'll be very welcome to join our study groups on Saturday about the Medium's book, which is probably the main book to understand a bit more about the different ways mediumship works and influences in ways. So feel free to join us on Saturday. And with that, I'm going to close today's session. I want to say thank you very much for everyone. I see Denise also sent a message. Hi, Denise. Nice to see you here. Thank you, Severina, for your participation. And thank you, Guilherme, for being here with us again. Very nice to have you. And yeah, I'm going to finish. I'm going to leave you the slide with a QR code. If you have any questions or any suggestions, you can just post on if you put your camera on the QR code, it's going to open a form automatically. It's an anonymous form. If you don't want to identify yourself, you don't have to. And that is it. Thank you very much. See you next time. Ciao, ciao.
Ciao, ciao.